All right, so we'll get started. My name is Matt Cross, and today I'm talking to you about some of the research that we've been conducting here with our partners. This is a very large project that it involves a lot of people. Most of them are named here. It's really kind of a mouthful, so we just kind of like wrapped ourselves up under this generic Blanding's turtle working group. It's not really anything official, mostly just trying out the logo for size. So we'll go on and get started here. So when we talk about Blanding's turtles, if you're not familiar with Blanding's turtles, that's a conversation I suppose we can have at a different time. But they're a medium small aquatic turtle, about the size of a American football when they're full grown. And their range kind of is here in the Midwestern Eastern United States. Throughout their range, there have been a decent number of surveys conducted, but most notably, Ohio and Michigan kind of fell behind. So we know when take for Michigan, for example, there are a lot of element occurrences. They've had more than 200. But to the best of my knowledge, the only long-term study there is the E.S. George Reserve. A lot of other little side projects have been undertaken, but nothing at the, any kind of thorough survey. Same thing in Ohio. We've had a few offshoots. We've had a long-term survey here from the Toledo Zoo in Northwest Ohio for about 15 years. Same thing in a few places elsewhere, but not really these thorough assessments we've seen in these other states. And so this became really important as the Blanding's turtles are on the list for the candidate list for listing on the Federal Endangered Species Act. And so we want to have as much information for the to pass off and to help that listing. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask here. There we go. So our group got together. We set out to we applied for a competitive state wildlife grant, and our goal was to with the survey the status of the assessment, or do a status assessment survey for Blanding's turtles in Northwest Ohio and Southern Michigan. This group, we're the ones who applied for the grant, but then our technicians, they're the ones who actually did all the work. They're the boots on the ground. We had quite a few people involved in this, and it was a pretty awesome effort. Our technicians were really great, and they also took plenty of time to conduct side research, mostly with Oreos. So our project had four main objectives, mainly to develop and implement a monitoring strategy, and not necessarily develop but modify the monitoring strategy of the Northeast Blanding's Turtle Working Group to fit our needs. We're going to create distribution models to prioritize areas throughout the range, our study area. We gathered a lot of genetic samples to look at that aspect of things, and we really wanted to develop a unique conservation plan for our sites that would be beneficial to the states moving forward. Today, I'm mainly going to focus on the implementation of the monitoring strategy, the coordinated monitoring assessment. We could be here the rest of the day talking about these other things. So we'll kind of touch on them, but the main part here is that we're going to focus on the surveys. So this was, again, we used the conservation assessment methods from the Northeast Blanding's Turtle Working Group. This is a two-tiered approach that focuses on long-term intensive surveys as well as rapid assessments. These take place in wetlands, have different focal areas, and are designed to answer a couple different questions, mostly on where they are. The long-term sites kind of get into those population numbers at those individual locations. And so this two-tiered approach worked out really well for them. So we just kind of modified it for our uses. And it worked out pretty well. Our study area, again, we're not going to really focus in on the details here. We picked the Lake Erie Watershed because this kind of gave us a boundary in Michigan. So the Lake Erie Watershed really encompasses all known Blanding's turtle locations in Ohio. Michigan, as I said, they have more than 200 element occurrences in almost all the counties in the Lower Peninsula. So we wanted to pick a reasonable boundary for our survey, so we weren't trying to survey the whole state. So we confined it again to the Lake Erie Watershed, and we were sites in Ohio and Michigan. The habitats we were in ranged from the pristine, Lake Erie wetlands that are very large and unfragmented to these early season flooded forests. And in a lot of cases, especially in Northwest Ohio, with ditches. The habitat use in their range varies greatly, and it can kind of run the gamut. So the surveys, it's not popping up. Anyway, let me see here. So our surveys, we used hoop and Promar traps, and it involved a series of 4 focal points. Each focal point had 5 trapping locations. The trapping locations had, each trap location had 1 hoop trap and 2 Promars associated with it. They were baited with trout and fish oil, and these were placed throughout wetlands and allowed us to look at the kind of distribution throughout those areas. Honestly, putting the fish in the fish oil was the least favorite part of our technicians' jobs, but they got used to it. So honestly, we can just dive into the results. Again, I apologize that one picture wasn't showing, but kind of give you an idea of the framework of where the trapping strategy within the wetlands. So in Michigan and Ohio in 2019, in Ohio, we were able to survey 37 sites. In Michigan, 29. We put in a massive amount of effort in terms of trap nights for these turtles. The abbreviations over there, EMDL, are going to be Blanding's turtles, CHPI, painted turtles, CHSE, are snapping turtles. And we had a pretty successful first year. In total, we put in over 12,000 trap nights. And as you can kind of see, our Blanding's turtles per trap night varied between Michigan and Ohio. We look at comparing this to the data from the Northeast Blanding's Turtle Working Group. We can kind of start, since we collected these data in the same fashion they did, we can start looking at these and looking at this from a bigger picture. So we put in a pretty comparable amount of effort, and we can look at these Blanding's turtles per trap night, but I tend to lean towards trap nights per Blanding's turtle because it's easier for me to visualize. And honestly, so we needed more trap nights in Ohio to get a Blanding's turtle, but that really varied greatly throughout the trap locations. So we can see here that it ranged all the way from, 1 to 2 trap nights to close to 250. The OSU crew put in a lot of work for this. In Michigan, MNFI, it varied again. And so there's a lot of factors that go into these different sites that kind of tell, how easy it is to catch the turtles. Again, our total turtles captured for all 3 of those main species fluctuated throughout the year, but we had a peak in late May. So we looked at total captures and captures per trap night. Really towards the end of May, there was our witching hour or witching week, and then it kind of died down throughout the rest of the season. Although Michigan did have some luck in late September, which was pretty cool. This is just fun. If we start looking at how the variation within the weeks, this is just from one of our sites, and it just really, really crazy and really interesting to see how much variation you have at the same location. Our sex ratios, where we were encountering Blanding's turtles, were pretty even male to female, depending on where you are, at least in the places where we got a decent number of turtles. And our age structure did tend to be more adult skewed, but that's kind of to be expected. There were several sites where we did get some of the representatives from all size and age classes in our traps, which is great news. We were able to kind of compare preliminary. I'm still working on teasing this out. Are the hoops versus Promar traps in terms of turtles per trap night. And for Blanding's turtles, it was pretty even. For painted turtles, slightly more so for hoop, and for snapping turtles, definitely, leaning more towards those hoop traps. One of the really cool parts about this was our community science. We've had a long-term volunteer who gets his community involved in reporting turtle sightings for us, and we've rolled this into our surveys. So he also does visual surveys for us, and then I have a teenager who does visual surveys near her house. And so even though 2020 was kind of a wash for a lot of us, we were able to keep the community science project going and got some really cool data. We did an outreach program where we handed out this. It's a magnetic leave behind, so it's got all our information on where they can report Blanding's turtle sightings. And this actually generated, I think, 5 to 6 new potential sites, 3 of them confirmed, and 5 to 6 sites early on. Their potential, 3 of them confirmed with the Blanding's turtles, and so this is a pretty successful effort. And while we're out in the field, we had so much time to interact with the public and really to spread the word and get people interested in this. We entered a photo competition with Memphis Net and Twine. We did a video here kind of showing what we do from the Toledo Zoo, and we had about 12,500 views. So we really hammered home the education outreach side of this, along with the main part of our grant. Really, we're not just collecting data on Blanding's turtles, we're getting data on snapping turtles and painted turtles. So if we look here, our current harvestable limit in Ohio, if we increase that by 1 inch, we actually end up protecting about 80% of our potentially harvested females. And just for fun, Conan 1951, his maximum straight carapace length was somewhere there in the 330 range, and we definitely knocked that out of the park. So in 2020, it was kind of a wash, but we did we updated our distribution models and revisited some of our sites. Our geneticists kind of started doing their work, and we've got a couple of grad students working on the landscape genetics as well as the occupancy modeling. In year 3, we're going to wrap up our surveys. We're planning on revisiting some of our sites, kind of testing out some new tweaks to the methodology, and then we'll be working on that conservation plan. We've already started talking with Midwest Park and had discussions with the USDA NRCS, the Working Lands for Wildlife group. And yeah, so I think that with that, I just want to acknowledge all of my helpers, big and small, and I will take any questions if I can figure out how to find the Q&A bar here on my thing. There we go. Yeah. All right, so we had a couple of questions early on. Do you have evidence for interspecific competition affecting Blanding's turtle numbers? Not really. I don't have any evidence of that with the data we have, but that's one of the things that I think we can hopefully look at with some of this multi-species. This multi-species occupancy stuff is, maybe does the presence of one affect the other? I doubt it. I think there've been a lot of places that have worked on similar things like that. But yeah, no, we haven't seen any evidence. And then were sex ratios in the trap types very different, more male bias and hoop? So I've read a few papers on this. I haven't looked at this in our data yet. I would tend to lean towards yes. In general, I think basking traps tend to favor more the females, whereas the hoop traps tend to be more male biased. However, if I remember correctly, we didn't see that in the Blanding's turtles. It was pretty even across the board, especially with some of our long-term data sets. Let's see here. Any other questions I missed? Question 1, question 2. All right, if there aren't any more questions, I guess I can turn it over to the next person. Oh, question 3, sorry. How do you know you're not recording the same turtle multiple times? So they're all marked. So that each one, this was we spent a lot of time marking every individual turtle. So in some cases we do recapture them, but in general, at the rapid assessment sites that are only a 4-day survey period, we don't get a lot of recaptures within that time frame. But yeah, so all of these turtles are processed. The Blanding's turtles, they additionally get pit tags in addition to the unique shell notching codes. Oh, good. So we have one more question. What is the conclusion about the status of the turtle in Ohio and Michigan and the Lake Erie watershed? So it depends on where you are. So in general, we had pretty decent success, especially within you know, some of our better sites. Same thing in Michigan. However, once you start to get in some of these other parts of Ohio, especially where the Great Black Swamp used to be, the numbers start to decline. So it's kind of one of those things where they're doing well, where they're not, they probably aren't. Yeah. So very last question. We only caught 3 red-eared sliders, and so I didn't present those in the data. All right, thank you everyone, and we'll talk to everyone later.